Well, good morning, everybody. I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Matt talked about yesterday. I thought that was a great presentation on a couple of things going on with snowpack, the influence on temperatures, and what he saw in terms of where this pattern might go. Now, I haven't got a lot of chance to talk to Matt this week. I started off the week in Great Falls, Montana, so I was over here, and then came down to Denver last night to catch a flight over to Minneapolis, where I am this morning, and then I end up tonight in Sioux Falls. Great. I can't wait to talk to some of the growers there tonight. We're going to get a chance to have some dinner with some of Nutrien's growers, and I'm looking forward to it. So it's a busy week of travel, but I was kind of crisscrossing a map that I wanted you to have a look at, right? So Matt showed where all that snowpack was. I'm going to show you the season-to-date percent of normal, just to show you how big some of these early season snows have been through this region. Now, we'd love it if we could get a lot of this moisture into the soil, and yes, some of the snow did fall on soil temps that were right at 32 degrees, or maybe 33, 34, which means if we can get a melt, a warm up in this area, we're going to be able to use some of this moisture. But as I was thinking about the map on its kind of entirety here, we can certainly find that there's a lot of corridors that really need to be picking up more and more of this snow as we go forward into the forecast. So I want to get into that too. I think that was a great way to kind of kick this off. It helps us understand where December is going to go in terms of temperatures, and I think there's some bigger picture things I want to discuss with you about the longer range, even starting into the month of January here as we get toward the last few slides. Now, one thing that has changed since yesterday is a big warm up in the temperatures. As of 5:30 a.m. this morning, this whole region has seen a nice bump up in temperatures. If you're curious how much, it looks something like this. 20 to 30 degrees, 35 degrees warmer than yesterday morning in parts of of Nebraska and Iowa. But don't get used to this. You can see what's already lingering right here. Major drop off in temperatures. That's going to be working its way back into this area. So tomorrow morning's lows could be substantially lower than this. In fact, I'm just curious. If we look this morning, 32 in Des Moines, the forecast low temperature for tomorrow morning is minus 12. So be prepared for some pretty significant changes here. One other thing to note, we have some cooler air behind the system that exited east, and I'm going to show you the snowfall and the rain that we got down here, which was desperately needed here in a few moments. But looking back at those temperatures, pretty wild ride. You're going to see multiple pulses of colder air coming through here as we go forward. So again, this is tomorrow morning's minimum temperatures on Thursday. We think it out there to Friday that spreads into the northeast. Saturday, again, watch the next round. While much of the west, northwest is mild, parts of the southeast are mild compared to average. There it is on Sunday, getting into Monday and Tuesday. You can just see these rounds of cold air that kind of originate here and work their way around that deeper Hudson Trough we spent so much time talking about. But I told you I want to start off with snow, so if you don't mind, I want to go back to that very quickly here. This is an interesting map. This is a year ago. Now, if you don't remember last year, I don't blame you, but we had multiple in the month of November and December strong onshore flow events like this, which are atypical of a La Nina. And yes, we had a La Nina last winter. Okay, so again, very odd. Now this year, what did we get? We didn't have this. Excuse me. Look at the snow we had in the central and southern Rockies. I mean, this was a great start to the western snowpack water year last year. Now, where are we this year? 2025 looks a bit more like this. And this has been an indicator of where that Pacific Ridge has lived, especially as of late, sending systems over the top, or at times we've had, of course, these cutoff lows in November. Remember those that have snuck through here and brought up some snowpack into this area. I just think hard about this because the longer we go into the season without building bigger snowpack, the more reliant we become on mid to late winter snow to really revive our reservoir situation. And that's going to be a topic that we're going to have to just continue to discuss over the next several weeks and several months. Now, as I was watching some satellite data from yesterday, I want to point out something Matt did mention, another day of that Thule fog into this area. So I feel like this has been going on about a week, maybe 8 or 9 days here in the Central Valley of California. Excuse me. And so we're going to have to just continue to monitor what this is doing. And I loved it that Matt showed one of the new tools we have on AgWeather, which is looking at solar radiation. You can go look at any of that anytime you want on the main website. But as I pay attention to this, there's a couple things that take note. Look at these high thin clouds here. See how they're coming out of the north. All right, that flow coming in this direction it's not a wet setup for the west. All right, that tells me there must be a big Pacific high just offshore. And with all of the more dense cloud here with snowpack underneath it, this just is another indicator that we are going to be capable of delivering rounds and rounds of colder air to this area, and we should expect more and more lake effect snow. In fact, it's kind of neat to be able to watch the clearing on the upwind side of the lakes. You have a real quick increase in wind speed near the surface, and what that allows to have happen is sinking air has to come in from the top, and what it does is it clears this out and then builds these lake effect snow bands on the eastern sides of the lakes, which have been doing very well on lake effect snow this year. All right, all hazards weather map this morning about 5:30. The good news I have here is there is snow coming into the central and southern Rockies, as well as parts of the northern Rockies too, in the current pattern. And we're going to pay attention to this as we go forward into the forecast, knowing that we've got to build up snowpack in this area. And if you just think about a Hudson Trough, it is the type of system that delivers clippers that go through this area, and they can push up against the mountains and bring in some snow. It is not the type of system that brings this over to the western U.S. mountains. I'm talking about the ones that line the coast. So if we have another look at where the snow has been just lately, it's great. Yesterday in Great Falls, some really, really good snow squalls. Saw a good one around Lewiston in this area. In fact, I sat at the airport for about an hour yesterday afternoon just watching it snow out the window. It was beautiful. Then I got to Denver, and I was glad I beat the snow that's coming in there here soon. But when I landed in Minneapolis, it was nice little snow there last night too. But farther to the east, deeper snowfall amounts. Look in parts of Indiana and Ohio last couple of days. Some spots over 6 inches. The lake effect's been going well. And I'll be honest, I think the models did a good job with this, except for what was expected here in parts of Massachusetts, where if you remember, we had a few models going way over a foot. And there have been a few pockets in through here that picked up some heavier snow. But I just wanted to kind of point that out for you right now. Looking at the radar this morning, this was actually last night. The system is exiting. It's out. Here's a little skiff of snow that came through with this weak little clipper that's now this morning moving over the central Great Lakes toward the east. And as you go back farther, you can see just areas of snow. But I was watching the animation and just something caught my attention I thought I wanted to look into. But I don't have an answer for you what I saw. But what I was watching was over here in Oregon, right there. I tried to follow it with the mouse, but let me zoom in and show you what I'm talking about. I don't know what this is, okay? Let me take you back. But did anybody in Central Oregon? I know this is not a very densely populated area, but there's an interesting artifact on the radar last night right here. Very bright return that went quickly into Nevada. See that? It's if you had me guess, I'd say something just probably re-entered the atmosphere, broke up, burned, and we're just catching it on radar. And that happens. I don't know, though. We'll have to see. But I'm looking at this thing right here. Just kind of fascinating little artifact on the radar last night. Nothing more than that. But we'll just have to see if any news reports come out about it. Okay, back to the forecast here, or at least looking at where we've been in the weather. I mentioned the rains in the southeast and how critical they were. Take a look at the national map, and you can see how important this last system was, especially at delivering rains into parts of Alabama, Georgia, the Panhandle, Florida, and the Carolinas. Now, a week ago, the rainfall totals in through here were not forecast to be this high. So I'm very thankful that the atmosphere outperformed the forecast. But notice it's still quite dry in southeastern Georgia into Florida. And we're going to have to continue to monitor this area because we did make a dent in the soil moisture. You look at the last few days' maps, this was all in this darker shade of red. But that moisture that just came through has wiped that out. Now, one of the big topics I'll be discussing today in front of this group at Minnesota is just how much of the Great Lakes Basin, the Mississippi and Missouri Valley here, and parts of the Ohio Valley still have inadequate soil moisture despite the snowpack sitting on top of it. You have to remember that even though there's snow on the ground, the amount of water that's in snow is significantly less. And a rule of thumb to remember is when you think about temperature and you think about its relationship with moisture, just remember this. Why is spring and summer why are they our wettest months? Because when the atmosphere warms up, its ability to contain water vapor increases. You can have a lot of snow in winter, but because it is cold, there's not much moisture in that air. So it squeezes out the snow, but doesn't give you what you need. And plus, the snowpack that's sitting on top of this, we got to wait for it to melt to get into the ground. Now, that's just to focus on one region. I understand. There's lots of other places we have to be talking about, but that's a big bullseye on this map that we're going to continue to monitor through the next several weeks. Speaking of the next several weeks, all right, we have a pattern that seems to be telegraphing to us what to expect in terms of where the deep troughs are versus the ridges. What we are noticing is that with time, the Pacific Ridge is going to be moving to the Aleutian Islands. That is what is going to wake back up parts of the Northwest to better moisture transport. We are watching this deep trough that's been anchored over the Hudson slowly slide its way out into the Atlantic, into the south of it, a very active storm track. That big blocking ridge right there, and one over, well, let's call it more Russia than Alaska, are going to be the critical pieces to setting up a couple of things. Flow that likes to do this, and where that cold air channel is going to be versus the milder and drier conditions. So that's going to be the mainstay of this discussion as we go forward. Now, I've been showing you this for weeks, and I want to look at it again. I'm curious, here it is in the past, here it now is in the future, what this trough feature is going to look like. Now, there it is. All right. Now, I understand there's a little ridge that worked its way in there. But what I just outlined for you, if you look at it over the top of the map down here, suggests that this region over the next full month, all the way into early January, has a flavor for ridging. Troughing. I was thinking ridging because I was watching this. See that little guy right there? I'm going to make a case for you in a little while that because of the movement of the MJO, we're going to get waves of these troughs coming through, okay? And I want to show you what I think that means in terms of the temperature pattern, the way the storm systems are going to come through, what this means west to east across the United States. So with that all as a backdrop, let's pick this up 8 a.m. this morning with the high-res NAM. Our clipper that's moving through the Great Lakes slowly slides through some more lake effect. Might get some snow right in through here this afternoon, this evening. And take a look at the snow coming into parts of Colorado. That we need. We got to get some moisture into this region. We then watch this dome of high pressure move in, and that is what's going to be the source of the brutally cold air that will be sitting over Iowa tomorrow morning. In fact, the whole of the Midwest, Western Corn Belt region. And the NAM has a couple things to think about. Some snow getting down to New Mexico, panhandle of Texas, rain over Louisiana. Again, we need more of this here. The lake effect is really going. And there comes another little clipper out of parts of Manitoba into Ontario. There is, as we look at it, Thursday, right on cue with about a week ago, another system coming into the northwest. But you saw earlier what I was mentioning, that flow is doing a lot of this, which is why we're not seeing much going on into California out of this pattern. So this is Thursday afternoon, playing into the evening hours, getting into Friday morning. And what we've got another chance at here is rain. Now, what's neat about this is it's not really a strongly associated low with this. You just have high pressure on one side, high pressure on the other side, and we're just putting a squeeze in here, making a front. And we're going to watch again, more snow, light snow moving through on Friday through the upper Midwest, getting through the Great Lakes. That is your clipper track going forward in this forecast. Now, if you just want to get a broader picture, don't forget on agweather.com, you can come over here and just see our precip models stacked up here. And my eye is just drawn to the bullseye in the middle of the country that's very dry in these forecasts, in the southwest, which is very dry. And you can also look at the snowfall just below it, 7-day snowfall maps. And you can tell that there's quite a bit of difference in where the models are putting down snow. Now remember, this one is only a 60-hour forecast. These are all 7-day forecasts, all right? And as I look at it, man, if I'm in the Midwest especially, I'm seeing some models not delivering much, others, like the AI, putting down quite a bit. And then if I'm looking at the GFS, I'm like, shoot, do I need to head to the Carolinas if I want to see some good snow? And that just shows you how this pattern is being driven by weaker systems rather than the big bullseye lows that come on bowling ball troughs across the midsection of the United States. In other words, what I'm telling you is our flow is like this, not like that. Okay? So let's go have a look at this and just kind of make some sense as to what's going on in the pattern. I'm going to start off with some vorticity maps because there's a big difference between the GFS solution and the European. This is mid-level spin in the atmosphere. And as I play you through Thursday, we're okay. Models are still looking halfway decent. What I'm concerned about as you get out there toward Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is this. Early next week, the models do not have the same potency or connectedness between a little shortwave feature here and one that precedes it. That shortwave is washed out, a deeper preceding low in the European. And you're going, why? What does that matter? That's going to really matter for the storm system that's forecast to come through the Carolinas, where the GFS is going to dump snow on it because of the better connection with the kicker wave on the backside, the preceding cold air, and what this could do for a low here. I'll show you when and where that's coming through, versus the European that may not have anything hitting that region. And then you note after that on Monday, look at the depth of that trough. This is what we're talking about. The timing and spacing of that, these are all little model nuances that make a world of difference when you compare your forecast models at that time. So I'll show it to you in just a second, but there we go. That moves through. Now, after that, we really see some differences. For example, take a look just a week from now. Look at this system that the GFS is bringing in. It's much flatter in the European. But the only thing I can say is they're doing this, ridging their flow like that. See it? That at least is something similar in this pattern. So now if we see the outcome of this, we start off with the model comparison. And I just took you right to Friday because I'm watching here. See that? If I'm in Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, DC area, I'm going to be watching this Friday forecast carefully, model to model. So watch here. If we go back to the beginning of this, system is exiting. You saw the little clippers moving through the snow into the central and southern Rockies. Then the models were pretty good on seeing this rainfall here. But already the Europeans got some snow. But this is not the big snow maker, okay? It's what follows it. See this coming into the northwest? All right, now watch. The GFS model feeds something on top of that front to the south. Look at this. And it combines the two waves early next week. See them? They're right there. Nowhere close in the European. They're too separated. The Europeans got more snow from Montana, some coming through the Great Lakes states, maybe into Iowa. GFS has got these waves closer. So watch, they come together. And look at that snowfall maker by Monday. European, nothing. GFS says, yeah, let's dump a bunch of snow here in North Carolina, Virginia. Now, at least agree on these little clippers that keep sneaking through, at least the presence of them. But that's a huge model difference we have to think about. Next Monday, Tuesday, good agreement on a system going through the Great Lakes. Our next low coming into the Pacific Northwest. But again, what did we talk about? That flow pattern's doing this, leaving this area and some of this out of the flow. And just taking out here a full week in the models, that's what you tend to see. Now, let's go ahead. I'm going to go and look at it. Let's look at the day 7 through day 10. And what I don't see in this setup is any sort of return to southwest jet stream flow. So you put it all together and you say, well, show me some rainfall and some snow. Here's the rainfall forecast from the European model. This goes out. Let's just take it out a full week here. And if you, let's just keep going. Let's go all the way out to 10 days. There it is. There is your snow coming down the mountains, your clipper track through here, your squeezed area in through there on high pressure to the south, high pressure in the central U.S. with that colder air. We're leaving this out of the flow, so it's doing that. Got it? Now, what does the GFS say? That's its 10-day forecast. Watch it again. I'll go back and forth. There's the Euro. There's the GFS. If you blur your eyes, okay, these aren't too bad. But the nuances, the small little nuances are huge. So I don't know. Let's keep looking here. I'll go to snow in a moment, and then I want to do a point forecast. This is total precipitation probability, where you stay under a half inch. Boy, it really identifies these dry areas. But look, snow here, wetter in the northwest. There's your track of better precipitation, and of course down here in the south. But I'm concerned about how this area continues to get quite drier. This pattern's just leaving it out through the next 10 days. On the wetter side of it, here's the probability of getting over an inch of liquid equivalent. If we step it up to 2 inches, again, along the Gulf Coast and in the northwest, and yep, some of this is going to be huge snowfall amounts here. 4 inches, absolutely. Just persistent flow in the northwest. And 8. Now, what is this going to look like in terms of snow? Huge. Look at this. Next 7 days here in the Northern Cascades, getting up here into British Columbia. But coming down the spine of the Rockies on the European model. And then there's your clipper track, enhanced by the Great Lakes. But the GFS, AI model first. Look, it's got very similar pattern out west. You can see, but it's really going more aggressive on a system right in through here, bringing in more snow to parts of Iowa, northern Illinois, parts of southern Wisconsin, and then over here into northern Indiana. But the GFS looks like that. So let's just do something real quick. Let's go to ag weather. Not gag weather, but ag weather. And let's go to local forecast. And I'm just going to type in, I don't know. Okay, let's just get us close to Raleigh, North Carolina. Now, this isn't the city I want to look at, but I want to show you a feature on this. If you come back over to that snow map, where is it? There it is. I just picked Raleigh because it was the first town that came into my head. But let's go right here on the border between North Carolina and Virginia. Okay, so what you can do with this is you can just drop a pin. So how about Johnson City? Let's just drop the pin near there. All right, we're hitting all the APIs. We're going to see what this looks like, and I want to show you 15-day snow once it's done. Now look at that. The difference here in the models. Look at this, the GFS. Maybe I didn't pick high enough elevation or get far enough into it. But don't forget, you can always come into this and look at model differences. And this is what I want you to do. So, for example, now you can see it, right? Nothing in the Euro, but in the GFS, a lot of rainfall coming through. 1.52 inches versus the 1600s. That's the difference I wanted to show you. That was not the right spot to pick for heavy snow, apparently. Or maybe I'm hitting the 6Z API call here, which is maybe got a little different solution. That's okay. It doesn't matter. But just remember, you can do that kind of comparison in these forecasts. But I do want to show you the way I tend to look at snowfall is I like to look at the probabilities. And over the next 10 days, there are our corridors, right? So here, of course, up there, we're sliding into this area, and then our clipper track. That's the probability of 3 inches. Notice what you don't have here. Here's 6 inches. Here's a foot. And here's 18. Love every bit of this. We need to get the snowpack built in this area. It's critical for the Columbia River, just as one example here. And also what'll eventually get into the Snake River and all the reservoirs. All right, by week 2, see it? There it is. That's what's left of our Hudson Low. There's a trough that's developing off the British Columbia coast and a ridge that's sitting in this area. And our Alaskan, shared Alaskan Russian ridge is now moving over through the Bering Sea here. So the week 2 pattern looks just the same. You see it? Look, drier south, wetter north. And Matt did a good job talking about this yesterday, but there seems to just be a preferred corridor as it comes around and over the top, that's the region that's going to pick up snows, and that's the reason it's going to pick up, the wetter conditions while we're drier to the south in this pattern. Okay, one thing I want to mention, with all that flow coming into the northwest, I'm really concerned once we get out here past Friday into Saturday, maybe Friday night to Saturday, and then early next week. There are just continued forecasts that show extremely strong winds here. And that can be very, very problematic this time of year. Overall, you just keep adding, and that clipper track just shows you where you're going to get your strong winds through the middle of the month. But I'm watching the northwest really for those what could be pretty strong winds. All right, let's come back to temperatures. Here's today's max temperatures. Tomorrow, very, very cold in this area. All right. And then we're going to work our way into Friday, which it moves east, warmer in the west. Our next pulse of cold air coming down Saturday, Sunday, here into the upper Midwest, while the west is warmer, and you know why. I'll draw it again. That's our setup, right? So that's by Monday into Tuesday of next week. And there we are to December the 9th. Now, how much mild air actually makes it into this area? Because we got some snow to melt in this area. And if we can melt it, I want to get it into the get it into the ground as fast as we can. One of the interesting things about the temperature pattern, if we look at kind of the matrix of ensemble model forecasts, is that we continue to see farther and farther to the east the extent of this mild air, which is partly related to the lobe of the polar vortex. It's partly related to where the Hudson Trough is. But in each case, there's a sharp divide here. And that is your clipper track. You can see it pretty well defined in the forecast here. So we are mild west. We are mild coming off the Rockies, but there's just this arcing region of cold air. And again, why? Because the jet stream is doing that. Okay, actually, the jet stream is because of the temperature pattern. It's a chicken and the egg kind of thing. What we do know is that the polar vortex is still a mess. There's a large sudden stratospheric warming event that's been going on here. We have our polar vortex, which is displaced, and I think we're going to spend a lot of the month of December watching it wobble around very weak. Now, as it wobbles, remember, it doesn't mean, it's not a guarantee that a polar vortex disruption is just cold Central North America to the east. No. It's got a lot of different variances to it. But the fact that it's so displaced and weak already means that I think we're going to have a much different year than we had a year ago. Here's another way by which we measure that. So if this is the average strength of the polar vortex, again, we're just looking at these zonal winds. Last year, it's this color line. Just bounce around up here in blue. Very strong polar vortex until late February to March. But even at that time, we did not truly get into a big Arctic outbreak anywhere across North America. Look at it this year. That's this line right here. Already on the weaker side of average. I think we're just going to bumble around in through here for a while. And the reason I suggest all of this is because if you look at the European model forecast, this is going through the middle of December, third week of December. Look, can you see that corridor of cold, milder in this area? We just keep playing it out. We get out there toward the week of Christmas, which is right in through here. there just seems to be plenty of access to cold air through a very narrow corridor, milder farther to the south. And we also want to know, well, what does this mean going into January? Well, look, see how it kind of comes in waves? And then you get into mid-January, it's like, bring it back. In mid-January, we're going colder in the west, but there's a known bias in the models in the winter to just keeping the west cold. But I'm curious about this and its longevity. The other side of this is precipitation. Let's look at a 30-day precip map, but let's just take you now, I don't know, let's go out to the 10th. Let's just do that, December 10th through January 10th. And we've got it. So here it is. The flow's coming over the top, right? Doing this and that. That leaves this area drier, but a lot of it's now coming in the next 2 weeks, okay? But that's your overall pattern, I think, that the models are trying to hone in on. Now, do I trust the models with all this? Not nearly as far as I could throw them, right? I think it's one of those things where we just get an idea from the models. But I will point this out that I think is critical. We watched for months the MJO just get stuck here. This goes back to the early November. And then late November, Kelvin wave. See it? Now, subsidence. Soon, Kelvin wave. Then, subsidence. You're going, what does that mean? When this happens, the MJO begins to make these moves where it does this over about a, 3 to 4 or 5 week time period. And what I'm telling you is that at least is a signal that the atmosphere is going to go on a bit of a repetitive pattern. So what does that look like? Arctic, warm up. Arctic air, warm up. What is the channel? Well, you've seen the channel. If I go back to it, the channel is here for the Arctic, warm up. Arctic, warm up. See that? We may be in something like that for a while until something comes through and disrupts this. Okay, that's where I think we are right now. Here's the other thing. This is a letting go of the negative Indian Ocean dipole and the La Nina. Because if La Nina was still firmly in place, you'd see these blue-greens stacked up like this. This would all just be blue-green. And there'd be, subsidence over here and subsidence over there. Nope, it's no longer stacked. We are moving. See that? And that's what's going to be, I think, an important part of the tropical forcing of our forecast. Now, what does it mean? Well, if you're in phase 8, which is what we're in right now, okay, deep Hudson Trough, little ridge off the southeast. That's what's so dry in Florida. In between, we're wetter. That's why you're going to see that down here. But then the bigger ridge is moving there. See it? So the flow has to come over this and around, and a little bit's going to come into parts of the northwest. So that's the flow we're dealing with. Now, just imagine you flip this over later. I don't know, let's just go to phase 3. Look, deep trough here. Ridge builds back in. See that? See the flipping? I think we're going to see that in December. And that means the next 2 weeks look one way, and then the 2 weeks after that look another. Then Christmas comes in with an Arctic blast along that same corridor I've been talking about. And we're just going to keep flipping this pattern over and over and over again until something more dominant comes along to set it all up. But I'll just be honest with you. Overall, there's nothing for me to tell you to expect extended, long, warm time periods if you are. Let me just draw it on the map so it's clear where I'm talking about. I got to get you a map. I would not expect extended warm time periods. Let's do this a little bit better. Take those off. If you're in that corridor. Here, yes. Here, yes. In the southeast, in waves. But if you're in this corridor, I think we're just stuck into a pretty good shot at some cold, more access to much, much colder air. That's all right? Where do we finish with this? I think the other thing you'll have to watch with me is the momentum change. So we came way up in November, or at the end of October, November. December starts high. I think we're going to back off again. And that's, again, related to that MJO translation. But if you can imagine, it's just probably going to do this for a while. Sorry, I'm drawing on black over black, but you get this idea. We're just going to bounce around average, and that's going to be critical to understanding how the midwinter pattern is going to be. So we'll keep talking about it. All right, I want to finish up with South America. We did get some new satellite data from Grace looking at root zone soil moisture, and it lines up pretty well if you look at our last 30 days from the CMORPH data set on who's drier. Now, I'm not hearing major problems out of Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás, this area. It's early on beans to really know that, but I think we're going to have to just keep an eye on it, because if the models are right, we're going to bring a bunch of rain into this here over the next 10 days. So that's your 7 day. Here's the 10 day. See this? And we've watched the models attempt to do this. The GFS, of course, is drier, but we'll just keep an eye on this, going forward, because this could be huge for that area in terms of production if they do get these rains coming through that drier swath. We are a bit drier in the forecast in Argentina. Both models agree on that. But the next 10 days, the models are really pretty aggressive after this particular pattern. So another point to be taken here about global ag production. All right, I'm going to stop there. Tell you to have a great week. Matt will pick this up tomorrow, and I'll talk to you again early Friday morning. Have a good one. Thanks.